Welcome to the CX Sessions from the Customer Experience Innovation Institute. Every episode, we provide an innovative perspective on customer experience from the people who are changing your world, one experience at a time.
Welcome back to CX Sessions from Melbourne, Australia. I'm your host, Simon Chris, and joining me today is Daniel Iezzi. Daniel, welcome to the sessions.
Thanks, Simon. It's great to be here.
And as always, when talking to Australian counterparts, I make a point of acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands on which we meet, rest and play, and pay my respects to elders past and present. Daniel, love for you to start off, for those that, if there's somebody on the planet that doesn't know you, just talking about your journey. How did you start out in life? How did you ultimately wind up in CX?
Really good question. And look, it was ultimately actually quite by accident or certainly not by planning.
That's usually the way for CX people. Yep.
I know, right? And certainly for retailers, which is my background. When I was at university, I'd actually planned to be an academic, and I was studying an arts law degree, double majoring in French, very useful subject. Wow. And anyway, didn't finish the law degree and ended up finishing or graduating my arts degree and doing an honours year, and I dragged that study out as much as I could, and I thought I'll do a master's. And while I was doing that, I was supporting myself with some part-time work in retail, and that's when I caught the retail bug and sort of my first foray into the world of customer experience and customer service. And I was at a department store. For those Sydney siders might know Grace Brothers, which is now part of the Myer group, and spent a couple of years there, and then went to David Jones and the other big department store in Australia, and started as a sales manager and worked my way up to a store manager. Did that for a few years, and then moved into the head office and did a number of roles there. But whenever the roles that most interested me in head office were the ones that were really directly related to the customer. So I was a customer services manager many, many years ago, and really enjoyed that. That's when most of our customers typed letters to us, and showing my age. And but I worked in corporate partnerships for quite some time, and then about 3.5 or 4 years ago, I was tapped on the shoulder to move into a fairly new role, which was general manager of customer service for David Jones and Country Road Group. So that company was part of the same parent company, and we were regionalising customer service and the contact centres for both groups. So I kind of was very reluctant to do that role because I'd done customer service before and thought,
like most of us,
won't be much of a challenge, yeah. And boy, was I wrong. So in that role, I had quite a few things to do. We had to move or relocate the David Jones Contact Centre from Sydney to Melbourne. And in doing so, really had to bring it into not even the 21st century, the 20th century. They were still using the same solutions and tech and hardware that we'd introduced 10 years earlier when I first set up that contact centre. So there was a real move to modernise the tech stack and do the same with Country Road Group. And so we completed that program in a very short period of time. And then 3 weeks later, the big C word, COVID, happened. And we kept progressing and really transforming customer service from there, and really undergoing a very fast-paced digital transformation of the contact centre for both those brands.
So it sounds like quite a kind of convoluted path to get to CX. It tends to be the case with everybody in the industry. I don't think anybody ever left school and thought, I'll be a call center manager. Right? It doesn't happen. And actually, I was doing one of these sessions recently with Brad Cleveland, and I talked to him about how I'd often saw the open door policy, and that was that you happened to be walking past the manager's open door when he decided that he needed a contact center manager. And so you just kind of got, as you eloquently put it, tapped on the shoulder, invariably roped in is a better word, into doing so. And did it kind of feel a bit like that too?
Look, it did and it didn't. I mean, it did on the one hand, but on the other hand, it's surprising. It's a space I love working in, so I don't know why I was reluctant to take it up at the time. It's a bit of I must have been having a bad day or something. But it's interesting. I think the point earlier that you made that no one really thinks I want a career in CX. That sort of says volumes about how this space is perceived as a career opportunity. And I know when I was doing my master, my MBA, which was sort of whilst I was working at DJ's, the subject I enjoyed the most and the one I did the best in was customer services management, and really loved it. Yeah, still wouldn't naturally think, well, that's a career I necessarily want. So it's kind of there's a real disconnect there. I don't know if that's just me or that might hold true for other people as well.
No, I think that holds true across a lot of the industry, and there's a lot of people that come into the industry at that agent at that frontline level that think, I'll do this while, or I'll do this until. So I'll do this while I study.
Yep.
And then at some point they become a team leader, and that's when their head seems to surface above the water, and they can kind of go, hang on, I could make a career here. And you know what I mean? But it changes as we go along. Now, I've heard you, I've had the pleasure of hearing you speak at a number of conferences, and I always love your style. It's totally relaxed, no BS. I love it. And I know I've asked this question before, and I'm going to throw it at you again. The differences between the in-store customer service, the in-store CX, what does that mean, versus this virtual, contact center chatbot world. How have you kind of played between those two? What are the big differences that you see?
It's a very good question, and I know I've probably answered it before, and I'll probably answer it differently every time. I think, and I guess I always look at this through a retailer's lens. I think once you've been a retailer, it kind of it sort of sticks there in your gut. When you look at a bricks and mortar store, for the most part in Australia, at least, that hasn't really fundamentally changed. It's pretty much the same kind of experience that it was, when I was a child. Admittedly, there's some new technology and some changes, but nothing completely drastic. A time traveler from 40 or 50 years ago, will go, oh yeah, I'd recognize this. If you look at the contact center space, I think the transformation there has been much more dramatic. And in the retail context, there's a real disconnect between the two, and that's slowly changing. But retailers love to say they're omni-channel, and it's a word that gets, I think, thrown around a little bit. I've certainly thrown it around, and I think when you start digging a little bit deeper, most retailers aren't truly omni-channel. And if I can describe it the best in terms of an example. So, and this is one that we see time and time again. A customer will be browsing online, and we know that customers more and more these days, as part of their shopping journey and their consideration, so on, they'll browse online, then go into store. And so she might be browsing online, and she's looking at some particular products, and she might have a few questions about them. She might have some questions about the features and benefits, or might be a question about stock availability. So increasingly these days, she'll get onto live chat with an agent who can answer some of those questions. For example, stock availability questions or some basic questions about features and benefits in our instance. But then when it starts to get a little bit more complex, then we rely on the team member in store. So, for example, the customer might be looking for a particular, say this, sweatshirt I'm wearing. She might say, "Oh, look, can you just check if Chadstone store's got it in a small?" And we might say, "Yep, they've got it there." And then the customer will say, "Great, can you put it on hold? It's a half-hour drive for me. I want to make sure it's there and it doesn't get sold." And to date, we've had to say to the customer, "Well, you need to ring the store. We don't have a process of doing it. We could send them an email, but they might take 2 days to pick that up." And so that's when these walls start going up between the customer, the contact center, and the store. And so we've made it not necessarily by choice, but it's become very, very difficult for the customer to get the information she needs seamlessly across multiple touch points within the business. So that's where the opportunity now lies, with live chat, with AI, with a good CRM solution, single view of customer. We can start chipping away at those walls, and then really making it easier for the customer to find the information she needs whenever she wants it. Typically, it might be 10 o'clock at night, for example, once she's put the children to bed and so on. And for her to make that shopping purchase or journey truly omni-channel and truly seamless. But there's a long, long way to go there for most retailers, I think.
Yeah, and I can't help but wonder if that is actually an ever-increasing risk for retailers. I mean, there's always been the disconnected journey. I remember some years ago, I went online to look at some Dulux paints, and they suggested that we have an in-home consultation. So we got the in-home consultation, and they said, "Great, now you go to the paint store and you buy this." I went to the paint store. I said, "We're going to paint the house." They said, "You should have an in-house consultation." I'm like, hang on, how do you not know that that's already? So it's that type of thing. But I think, I wonder, and you would have a better view than me, if in our contact centers and things, we are starting to use AI and better CRMs and better systems that know what's going on. Is that going to change the customer expectation for what they expect when they walk into the store? Will they expect the store staff to be as savvy and as connected as the contact center?
I think it depends. I say that because you're kind of a couple of different scenarios. In some instances, or actually many instances, the customer actually knows more about the products we sell than the team members do in stores. And that's partly because, like contact centers, retail is unfortunately not really considered a career. It's sort of transition career for a lot of people. It's highly casualized and so on.
Okay.
And so, if you're, for example, buying a new TV, you've now got all of that information about the different types of TV, the different features of them, pricing, and so on, delivery options. You can research all of that online at home, whereas probably 20 years ago, you had to go rely on the team member in store who was the owner of that information. So in one sense, I think customers expect they'll just go in. They might have a couple of final questions, or they might want to see the product in real life if we're talking a big ticket item like that. Then I don't think they're necessarily expecting that staff member to be super knowledgeable, unfortunately.
Okay.
So there's that kind of scenario, but then alternately there are different ones. So if I think about beauty, and you need a skincare consultation or makeup consultation, as an online, that's hard to do truly online. So you do rely on the advice of somebody in store. And when you're going there and having a treatment, for example, you're hoping that, and the expectation is that team member will know what they're talking about and will be able to give you the right advice so that you can walk away confident. So I think there's a couple of ends of the spectrum there. It probably depends. Having said that, overall, though, I think certainly customers are expecting more and more for retailers to kind of make it easy for them. And it's not necessarily having, I guess, that a team member in store with all the knowledge, but having that information easily accessible, whether it's through live chat, whether it's through a self-serve option, whether it's through getting it through asynchronous messaging. But she's just got to be able to access that easily. And it's interesting. She'll often say to us, "Oh," she might be chatting with us online, and she'll say, "Oh, great, you've got that item at Chadstone store. I'll just pay for it in this chat." Now, that'd be great. We haven't been able to we weren't able to do that while I was still at David Jones and Country Road Group. Yeah, I did ask IT about it, and their head exploded, and they said, "Well, we'll have to work our way up to that." But so it's interesting. The customer's already got some ideas about how she would love to shop with us. So it's the retailers probably, in many instances, playing catch up to the customer's expectations.
Yeah, I have seen an example too of where the contact center extended itself to not only be the source of information for the customers, but to be the source of information for the in-store people. So when they had a question, they messaged the call center and said, "Hey, how do we do this and this?" And the call center could tell them. In the journey that you had with Country Road, because that was quite a transformative journey. Could you talk us through a little bit about what some of the challenges were that you had to get over, and some of the things that you launched that they didn't have before then?
Yeah, look, we came from a pretty low base. So, admittedly, Country Road Group is a little bit ahead of David Jones. So, Country Road Group is already using Sales for Service Cloud as their CRM solution, so they were a step ahead. So we had to align David Jones there, but both companies were using handsets in the call center, and DJs was using some great desktop computers running Windows XP. So the first phase was really just bringing them up, giving them the right tools that they needed to be able to have a single view of customer. And we initially kind of went from 0 to 100 in that we also replaced telephony with Amazon Connect. And, that's okay. But what we did and I know you asked about Country Road Group, but the big changes initially were on the DJs, more so on the DJ side. When we launched that, we automated a lot of intent. So we automated things like the order status, returns policy, trading hours. So customer could use natural language to ask the inquiry, and the virtual assistants would be able to resolve it. And the really curly problem that we tried to resolve, and I'm laughing because I used to have a lot more hair, was for David Jones, the contact center was also the switchboard. So if a customer rang to speak to the Chanel counter in the Elizabeth Street store, she would ring the phone number for Elizabeth Street, which would actually, all those phone calls would be transferred into the contact center. And we had a team that they could see the store number that the customer was calling, but then they'd need to ask the customer the department and the brand, so that they could identify which of I think there are about, if I'm not mistaken, about 9,000 telephone extensions in the business.
Wow. And
they would push the call to that extension. And it was not a good process. And 50% of the time, customers would ring and the phone wouldn't get answered. So, and this is the challenge with bricks and mortar stores, the team members having to juggle a lot of balls at the same time. They've got customers in front of them that they need to serve. They've got maybe stock that they might need to put out. They might be a shoplifter lurking in a corner, and then the phone rings, and they have to prioritize which one of those needs to go first. And it's quite often the customer phoning in that gets down the bottom of the list. And then if they do answer the phone, they'll probably put you on hold straight away for about another 5 minutes. So we looked to automate that, and it was, I think, the team at AWS was saying it was one of the most complex models that they had to implement. I think it had something like 44,000 or something different combinations that the virtual assistant needed to understand. And plus we needed to maintain those because brands and things move in departments all the time. And I remember day one, customers rang and this virtual assistant would answer the phone and say, "Welcome to David Jones, Simon. We could recognise your phone number. How can I help you?" And customers didn't say a single word. And we inevitably would pick up that call and we'd say, "Oh, why didn't you say anything?" And the customer would say, "How did it know my name?" We would have to explain that. And they
Big
said,
brother.
"Oh, but I don't really like that." Yeah, big brother, I don't like that. And then they said, "But what do I say?" And we said, "You just say what you would say to a person." So it was a steep learning curve in how I guess AI works and how that you've got to almost train customers a little bit, help them along the way with that change. So we did a lot of work there, and over time it paid off, and the bots could understand what the customer was saying and put them through to the store, but the stores still didn't answer the phone. So we kind of realized it was about 2 years in. I went, I've got to look at this a different way. The technology can only get us so far. So which leads me to sort of a change that we implemented a little bit further down the track at Country Road Group. And that was looking at how we can, again, deliver a more omni-channel experience. And we had seen over the last few years this real transformation of how customers engaged with both David Jones and Country Road Group. So the phones used to be the single most important channel for both those brands, and they dropped right down, particularly with the introduction of live chat and our amplification of live chat. We'd had live chat at David Jones for probably about 6 years, but never really did anything with it. So COVID obviously gave us an opportunity to realize, well, this is a more productive channel and we can deflect inquiries. And customers really embraced that. So phones became less and less of an important channel for us. And emails started to decline as well. And asynchronous messaging and live chat were really taking off. And so during a couple of the lockdowns on the David Jones side, we were we were doing some proofs of concept with using live chat in stores because, again, the contact center team members are generalists. Most of them, for the most part, they haven't worked in stores. So if a customer does have a query about product features and benefits, they'll try and answer it, but they're not always best placed to provide that answer. So we use skills-based routing. The contact center team would triage the inquiry, and then if they couldn't answer it, we'd use skills-based routing to assign that chat to a dedicated team member in one of the dark stores at the time. So, beauty was we had some beauty experts in some of the stores, and it was phenomenally successful in that customers who went down that path could have their question answered. Their average transaction value and conversion rates were far higher than a control group or than the rest of the site. The only challenge with live chat in store is how do you operationalize it when the store is actually open? And it's a bit like the phone. The team member goes, do I chat on the phone or do I chat with a customer that's standing here? Particularly down that synchronous channel, it's a real challenge. And we tried various options there about putting people in a room out the back, but they were underutilized, trying on the selling floor, and they really struggled getting that balance right. And so then when we launched text messaging, we thought, let's give that a go. And again, the Country Road Group, a Country Road retail team they came to me and said, look, we've really got a problem with phones. It's stressful for us. We can't answer them. What can we do? And so we decided to run a little experiment and see how many of those phone calls we could deflect through text messaging channels. So we unpublished the store telephone numbers for Country Road, and replaced it with a mobile text number, and with some directions to say just send your inquiry through by text. And we were able to answer 70% of the inquiries that came through without having to direct them to a store. And then we had a handful of stores where we could assign that text conversation to if the customer did need some specific help, say putting a product on hold. And when we did that, the store would have all of the context of the conversation, plus any notes that the contact center team would add to it. So, and they found it, they said it's great, the phones don't ring. And they could manage those messages when they had downtime. It might be first thing in the morning or at the end of the day or after the lunchtime rush. So, we had some good learnings out of it. I think it works very well for those bigger stores like Chadstone, for example, or the CBD stores. The challenge and the big learning for us were those, I guess, those kind of more neighbourhood stores like Sorrento in Victoria, for those people who don't been there, very nice little beachside resort, and there's a little village there, and there's a country road store there. The customer knows the team member by name, and she didn't want to text them. She wanted to actually have a conversation with that team member. So we didn't nail that component of it, but overwhelmingly the retail team didn't want to sort of turn the clocks back. They wanted to keep pressing forward with that innovation. So, that was kind of a really interesting test case for us, and a huge number of learnings came out of it as well.
Yeah. Look, I think there isn't, in our industry, there just isn't enough test and learn. Go and break it, play with it, see what else you can do. I used to work for a data-driven company that rhymes with Expedia. Anyway, we used to have KPIs around test and learns, right? Go, test it, learn it, break it, blah, blah, blah. So, look, thank you for that. As we come towards a wrap-up, I've got 3 questions that I like to ask everybody in CX sessions. And the first one is, what does a great customer service experience look like for you? Or can you give us an example of where you've had a great customer service experience?
I'm going to be a bit controversial here, I think, and I think I think the answer is, well, I don't know, maybe I'm not. I think it's a situational thing, and it depends. If I'm just going to, say, the supermarket to buy a few things, for me, a great customer experience is one that's fast and efficient. I'm not expecting a high relationship experience out of it. I just want to be in and out and then get on with it. If I was going to buy, say, a suit, that would be a different story. So I think for the most part, for the vast majority of transactions, I just want them to work and to work the first time, for the register to work, for the team member to know what they're doing, that sort of thing. So getting those hygiene factors right.
I could see you going to buy a suit because, let's face it, you are the best dressed man in CX in Australia.
I'll take that as a compliment. Thank you.
It was, absolutely. The second one was, what do you wish companies did more of in this CX space? What could they do more of?
I think the point that we were just touching on, I think to be brave and just keep experimenting. And, Country Road Group, I was fortunate the CEO really valued innovation and valued a test and learn approach. So I'd like to see more of that.
I'd love that to be a piece of advice that went to every new call center manager. Be brave, be daring. Yeah, absolutely. And the final question is, what book are you reading right now? Or where are you doing right now?
I'm reading very many, but I've actually got it here. It always sits on my desk. I don't know if anyone can see that. Yeah. So a bit hard to read, but it's Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. So I've been learning a bit about Stoicism and the Stoics.
Okay.
And I wish it's something I discovered a lot earlier. There's a lot of learnings that kind of would be great for anyone in a contact center or CS or CX space. Particularly, you can't control what you can't control, so there's no point worrying about it.
I see the academic in you hasn't gone away. Listen, Daniel, thank you for being on CX
Fine.
Sessions. This has been a great session, and I know that people love to talk about things where we talk about multiple CX touch points, not just the contact center or not just the store. So thank you for sharing your learnings.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
We'll talk to you again soon.
Bye.
That's it for this session. Let us know what you think or recommend someone for a future session at cxii.com.au. This podcast is brought to you by the Customer Experience Innovation Institute. Thanks for joining us, and tune in again soon to hear more CX sessions.